Radio Returns. And just about time too, because the country is in one hell of a mess. And I've woken up this morning to more problems than I think that anybody can handle. And all I see is MPs and our leaders blaming one another. Because this goes out at a different time during the day. This is Keith Hayes in Lewis with Rouser Radio, which is returning to marry up with Mirador Television because local media has been shrinking and local media is being silenced and local media has not been able to point the finger the way that everybody else is and each other, the politicians and so on. We were muted. Now it's time for us to start to research. So, Rouser Radio is back. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Doesn't that sound great in the morning? Normally, this is a very easy going time for us at Mirador Television and Rouser Radio. But things are just getting out of hand. And all that's happening is that we are seeing a very unseemly situation. With our leaders, both local and national, yelling at one another. And it is very unseemly. And at long last, the chickens have come home to roost. A lot of the things that have happened over the last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, now are beginning to make our life miserable. And if you don't think it's miserable already, look at what's likely to happen. The forecasts that are coming out of the economists, and the forecasts which are coming out of the Bank of England, and the forecasts which are coming out of the Treasury. Inflation possibly hitting at 7.25. Nobody knows or remembers what inflation was. Now, if you go into the supermarket, it's hit already. The cost of living is rising and is going to rise even more. In some instances, some analysts are saying almost double. Right? Where are we in terms of taxes? Well, we're going to get a tax rise in national insurance in April. So, the cost going up double, productivity now for a whole host of reasons, not least of which is inflation, coming down. Where are we in terms of energy prices? No matter what the government tries to do now, it actually triggered in in 2016, 2015, 2016, with the dreaded coalition government. It triggered a whole host of things, not least of which is green energy. What's wrong with green energy? Well, absolutely nothing, except that it's going to take 3 times longer to work than the predictions. But we are paying for it at a great rate of knots because we've done away with all sorts of emissions to try and hit targets which the politicians decided we could hit. But in reality, we are nowhere near. But what we've done in the meantime is we have stopped carbon unfriendly, or carbon issues anyway, at a faster rate than we should have. So now we have no alternatives. None. We are sitting on huge resources in the North Sea still, but we're not using them because we're trying to hit green targets which the rest of the world said weren't realistic and didn't make any attempt to reach. But we, being the honest Brits as we are, did, but we should never have set or agreed to those targets in the first place. So as a consequence, much as these things are to be desired, we have gone at them like a bull in a china shop, and now the individual is going to pay for it. Where do we start with globalization? Oh, let's just have a little music, shall we? Just a little music. to try and um, offset some of the nonsense that we've got. Uh, oh, please, yes. Well, hopefully I'm back. It's just finding our way around this little studio for the first time in quite some time before we move over to the television studio and come on a little later. But we took a holiday last week to take a look at the way that we could go forward with some new programs, and indeed we are developing those news programs as we have in the past. And it takes a little time, and we will introduce them as time goes by. But Return of Rouser Radio is one of them because there's another voice needed. Not many people listen to it at the moment, but we will build. We will build. We've got people who understand how to transmit these things in a much broader way than just the rouser way. And so, as a consequence, it's important that we get it going, even if there are only a couple of you listening. So let's really let loose now, because um, we see locally the council leader James McCleary on. No, he's not the council leader. It's Chloe Nicholson has taken over. Zoe Nicholson has taken over again, and it is becoming very apparent now, just sort of a bunch of amateurs we got in charge of us, inexperienced, and that's what we voted for, and that's what we've got. But the question of now, South over, the High Street on South over, the High Street, nothing. The council offices on South over are going to be abandoned, and the council is going to move to New Haven. Well, there's nothing wrong with that in principle, except that the centre, the county town is Lewis, and it has been, and that's where the tradition has been. But it's not just tradition; it's everything is bound up in here until we move to Eastbourne. So this move not only is adds to a lack of governance in the county town, but also is it means that we are going to be more and more and more distant from those people that make the difference. And somebody over the weekend was having a real go at potholes. Now, you phone somebody about a pothole now, they don't even know what you're talking about in this. And that's crazy. Well, not so crazy. Some people may say, I mean, what we've got to do is we've got to meet a challenging world by getting bigger and bigger and bigger. No, sir. And no, ma'am. We do not, because globalization, which everybody has followed slavishly over the last 5 or 6 years, and which the World Economic Forum thought was the savior of the entire world's economy, is being proved to be an abject failure. And who won't give it up? Our leaders and the financial institutions. If you really want to see how a company has gone downhill, treats its customers badly, charges the earth to its merchants, take a look at American Express. It got a globalization expert, not expert, supporter in about 1915, it says 1915, 2015. And as a consequence, where are we today? With a company that's lost its reputation, as far as I'm concerned. It's a bully. It's got American systems here in Britain. It doesn't treat its customers well. And it tries to maximize its profits at the cost of a decent reputation. I have never seen a company go downhill as fast as American Express. I'm not saying that if you're a shareholder, if you've got shares in American Express, you were rubbing your hands. Does very well financially, but it's going to lose out ultimately because it treats its customers like dirt, and particularly its elderly customers. It has no sense of social responsibility at all, and corporate social responsibility for a decade or more has been key in the business plans of many business organizations. Now it's being thrown out of the window. But globalization, that is, make yourselves bigger and bigger and bigger. Where has it failed us? The NHS, first of all. It wasn't so long ago you could easily get go to see a doctor. Well, I want to see a doctor because I've got, I think, something wrong with me. But it's up to me. At one time, I would see my doctor regularly for what was called a check, whatever we call it, the thing with cars, an oil change? No, not an oil change, but a safety check. The doctor would try to determine if there were things that I needed looking at. I gave gallons of blood, and I was satisfied that they knew what they were doing. Now, I can't even get through the front door. That's globalization for you on a mini scale, admittedly, but it's it's the policy, it's the practice that counts. It's what we do with the front door, the cutting edge. Globalization is also now beginning to demonstrate that if we've got a rich and a poor again in the world, globalization did it. Right? Banking are ruining societies because there's nobody there. You can't talk to a bank manager anymore, you talk to a computer. All in the name of globalization. Shopping, right? We cry out about the high street and yet encourage the globalization in terms of chains of either high street shops being part of chains and not locally owned at all, or the supermarkets. Are we going to stop using the supermarkets? No. And yet what we're doing is we're undermining and damaging our economy by so doing. At least the supermarkets as they are at the moment, where you can do almost anything yourself with a little click, 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 and which I refuse to subscribe to. Energy. We've had it cheap. What has happened is because the globe has decided that our planet is under threat. Well, it may well be. But if we haven't got any people left for it to be threatened with, what have we done? Yes, but wind power and alternative energies have proved not to be effective. Many can't be used in certain types of weather. Many can't be used unless you actually go back to fossil fuels. House prices are going to balloon, or they have been ballooning, and they're going to collapse. The economy cannot sustain them anymore. So those people who paid huge premiums just in the middle of the pandemic and thought they were getting a bargain, are suddenly going to find higher taxes and a property which is going to come racing down. And I know what the left will immediately say is, oh, home ownership is dreadful. My mother bought, they do. But they contributed to it because they wanted cheap housing. And they pushed the prices up. Now it's going to come tumbling down. Ah, dear, 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 dear. Dear, 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 dear. The world is in a mess. But what really is the bother is, and I wouldn't get excited, or as excited as I am, about this bother, about the things that are happening, if it wasn't for the fact that now those people who are propagating it and refuse to admit that they've done anything wrong are blaming one another. Right? The PM in crisis is 100 MPs are ready to vote against him. Yeah. And what are they putting in place? They went along with it. Many of those MPs got their jobs because of this false economy that was built by our leaders. And now it's about to come tumbling down around their ears. In fact, it is tumbling down around their ears. They don't want to blame themselves. No, 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 no. They want to blame somebody else. So they're thrashing around. Boris has pulled a few boners. So it's easy to blame him. But it's a smokescreen. They should be actually looking at themselves. And actually, as a society, so should we. We went along with it. We wanted all these dream things for life. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. We wanted them. And now, by God, are we going to pay for them? It's not the old adage of nothing in life comes free. I'm not saying that we can't create a Shangri-La, but it takes time and it takes effort and it takes creativity. And when things go wrong, it takes a president such as I think it was either Truman or one of the American presidents in the war who had a sign on his desk that said, "The buck stops here." Well, now our leaders don't want to put up a sign saying the buck stops here. They're too fat and they're too sassy. And as a consequence, what's happening is they are blaming everybody within their own bubble, except for themselves. The Metro, Tesco boss, the worst is to come. Food prices will soar by 5% by the spring. Well, the spring is just around the corner. It's 5%. It doesn't sound much at the lower level. Let's say a bottle of pop costs £1. It'll now cost £1.05. We buy 20 of them, and suddenly you're beginning to understand that 5% can mean a lot. The Guardian, 500,000 people face delays in seeing the NHS cancer specialists. Globalization. This crazy scheme that we've got. And will anybody say that it's oh, the computers, they would work wonders. Well, they're not. This great savior of the computers has been the underbelly, the soft underbelly of our society. The computers don't change. And when conditions do, we are left with a whole set of machines, if that's what you can call them, who are pouring out solutions that may have been valid 5 years ago, but aren't valid anymore. And the banks particularly are guilty of that. The Daily Telegraph. The Treasury blocks the Prime Minister's plan to clear NHS backlog. So the Prime Minister was going to pour some more money into the NHS. Can't say that I really approved of that either. I think it's reform. The one word that they hate, all of these people. Reform with a capital R. How sad. 21 years of investing for a positive future, somebody says. The Queen has disappointed me. She's given Camilla a blessing, and it says that she did it years ago to become Queen. That's catering to her son. It doesn't matter what you may think of Diana. He behaved abominably, and he is supposed to set the standard. If the Prince Regent, well, he's not Prince Regent, he's the king in waiting, let's put it that way, can behave badly, then that sets a sample. The Queen herself has been exemplary. But now she's given way and said, it's okay, son. I'm not blaming you, so the country mustn't blame you. It'll be interesting to see what the backlash is on that. The Daily Express. Honoured, my darling wife will be queen. Well, the Express supports quite often the government and the establishment. Even it's finding it a bit of a bitter pill to swallow, and I'm surprised at the Queen. And I think probably she's listened to the wrong advisors. That's what happens at the top sometimes. The Sun, busy Lizzie, the Queen back to work. Well, that's a good sign. Perhaps we'll see some sense come into our community, because our head of state, the Queen, with her limited powers, often brings common sense and a wisdom beyond any others to situations in the country. And don't ever think that she doesn't tick off our prime ministers, even though in theory she has less power than they have. She pulls them in and says, what the hell are you doing, chaps? Well, she'd better pull them in this time. The Financial Times. The EU prepares gas options if Ukraine crisis its supplies. Well, there's another thing. While we're all busy fighting over ice cakes at Christmas or at lockdown or whatever, the situation on the Ukraine border continues to get tense. Nobody is giving in. And when that happens, it normally means that somebody puts a foot wrong, that a rocket is fired, and all hell breaks loose. And nobody is backing down, not the Russians, nor the EU. As a consequence, this is something that should go to number one priority. It's all very well for me to holler and shout and yell about the issues that are facing us. And I've tried to cover all sorts this morning, only because we're just experimenting back with Rouser and I'm able to. But the fact of the matter is, we have got a problem. We have got a problem. And war is imminent. The Chinese leader, Xi, met with Vladimir. Whether it was in Moscow or China, I'm not quite sure. I think it was in Moscow a couple of days ago. Those two superpowers are chatting up. Then I think we've got a lot to worry about. But don't worry, they'll sort out the icing cake. Because that's the sort of thing that people are blaming them for. Wait until we get into serious trouble. Right. The Mirror has decided to jack it all in and be a blood donor hero. Like everything else, we're short of blood to give. Perhaps that's the best headline of the lot. And then the Star, God bless it, is determined that we shall have a weather crisis. And it's saying that on May Day, is it? Yes, I think it's May. Oh, no, on Valentine's Day. It picks its days carefully. It says that we're going to have a whiteout, that we're going to be hit by a huge storm on Valentine's Day. So if your sweetheart lives a little way away from you, get out your skis or your snowshoes, because the Star, God bless it, always taking a different view. It says you can have difficulty getting to it. I think that's enough this morning. We've been on it for 25 minutes. Let's just play one last little piece of music. That's called Ben Sound Ukulele. And all our music this morning, not that we've played much, has come from Ben Sound. Ben Sound is go to their site. If you're a charity or whatever, if you're not making any money, they'll let you use some of their music free, some of it, and it's very good. Others they sell at a very reasonable price. So do go to Ben Sound. We're grateful because we think they've got some great stuff there. Great stuff, and we use a lot of it on both Rouser Radio and the Merrill Television. And undoubtedly, if we ever get to the point where we make a profit, then we'll make contributions to Ben Sound. In the meantime, we're very grateful for their very good music, which supports us as we roll along. Well, that's it for this morning. This is Rouser back first thing. Hopefully, we'll be a little bit more entertaining, a little less gloomy tomorrow. Although both Mirador Television and Rouser Radio are concerned that things are going really into overdrive downwards, if you like, underdrive, I suppose is the word. Things are beginning to collapse. And much of it is because we've got a leadership that believes still in globalization. Bigger is better. Ha ha ha. Where they're living, God only knows. But also, the leadership that we've got is not capable of handling the situations. And all they're doing is they're yelling very hard to make sure they divert our attention from it. Okay, here we go. Toodle pip. See you tomorrow.